it's really gone really well. And this element of changing people's relationship with their data and really evolving process in the implementation of technology and developing ecosystems around that collaboratively with carrier partners and application ecosystem players, vendors, and many of them are here, or some are here, it's really been something that is very exciting. And I think, as you look at technology, I mean, if I have to sort of put it in one core framing, is the enablers have changed so much in the last year or two that the sense of possibilities is almost a quantum shift. And so when you think of shifts in virtualization, the tools to wrap around services layers, the shift of things to the cloud, and then the enablers of mobility, and you put all those sort of enabler sets, before you, what it really avails is a possibility for very simple and straightforward implementation within a significant process re-engineering context. And so I'd encourage people to not sort of get into that tunnel vision kind of view where we have to do everything we did last year for 5% faster and 5% lower costs. And if you've ever read sort of Clay Christensen stuff and the disruptive technologies where, you've got to think of, not being blindsided or being the blindsider in the sense that you have a real opportunity to rethink holistically your organization. And so all I'm really going to do with my time today is really talk about, is this not working? Talk about just different kinds of things you can do, and then we can really open up in Q&A. So I'm going to try and do it half and half, and I'll try to pay attention to the time. But really, what is important is this is really coming out of many different perspectives, and I'm just giving a few cases and all that where when you have information, when you change your access to information, you change your relationship to it, and it doesn't matter whether it's a consumer or a mobile professional or somebody who's working in different fields or public services of any kind of shape or form. You have different data sets, and when you can have access and updating and collaboration and alerting, it fundamentally changes your relationship with that and your processes. So I'm just going to go through some different cases of how we've used it we've worked with partners to use it, and how it's changed the processes. And what you're realizing is these are not fundamentally new apps. They're just different access relationships and event relationships with existing apps. And that's what I said about email, is we didn't create a new app. In fact, there was a subset of information of application features, but when you changed your access to it, it profoundly changed collaboration. And so it profoundly changed the nature of the app. And with Coca-Cola Enterprises, I mean, they've given this to their merchandisers. As you know, in that CPG world, merchandising is very important. And how do you change that collaborative relationship of routing and jobs and business information so that you have a well-merchandised product? It very matters what happens on the store, the shelf. And so fundamentally, they've transformed the merchandising relationship in the field with this highly collaborative application. And really, it's nothing they didn't have before, except it used to be very paper-driven and batch-driven and yet you're living in a highly dynamic kind of world. Another is Safe Light Auto Glass, and this is very interesting because this is a case where you had people executing work into the field. So there was not only dispatch, but there was consumption of materials and jobs opening and closing, but also they use peripherals. And so there's a rich innovation happening in peripherals where they just use a Bluetooth digital pen for signature capture, and a Bluetooth printer, and GPS. And so you peripheralize these things. I mean, and really, those of you that have a phone or a Blackberry, the way I say it is, you're all happy. Gosh, I get my email and all that. That's so good. And and I sort of say, well, you've bought a car, and you used to walk to work, and now you drive a car, and you're in first gear, and it's so happy because it's much better than walking. And I said, well, that's great. And now you got to try this thing called second, third, and fourth gear, and you've already paid for it. So how about, really taking further and further? Because these services interfaces and these Bluetooth interfaces in your data plan, you've paid for them. They're latent in the environment. So how can you deploy them? And you hear a lot of that on laptop. You use 5% of the processing power that you use, and does that mean you're not using it much, or you're overkilling, or is there a different way to think about how you do what you do? And this is something like, if you know Alan from UPS and he's here, they're doing a whole lot of this stuff now, where you use this event-driven collaborative stuff with peripherals, and then you use it for, business transformation, but also client service, because they virtualize services. So whether this is deployed in this kind of environment or package execution or services outsourcing, it's really the same core concept of, what role can peripherals play, and then you have really an intranet workflow extension to your belt, and now it's event driven, and it's paperless, and it's accessible. The other thing, in all the big workflow guys that you're going to see a lot with WebSphere and in a couple weeks, which we've done a lot, and Oracle at our DevCon, but also with SAP, where you have a native access to your customer app, your CRM, customer information. So it's native, so that when you finish a call, you click and you can log it. And those of you use the schedule, the PIM in it, when you click, instead of being in an Outlook schedule, you're in the actual SAP CRM app. And so that native, simple access, because those of you that use CRM systems, there's two core problems with them. Number one, the field person needs very simple access at the moment. And second of all, it's not that useful if they don't update the data fields as they use them, because the data integrity is not there. So how do you support that? And it has to be simple and accessible and native. And again, that's an access relationship. It's not a different application. It's an access relationship at play. Now, the other thing which is kind of interesting, and this is something we work a lot with the Cisco folks worldwide on, is we have just how we did the synchronization of your desktop to your belt. We do with Cisco synchronization of the IP PBX to your belt. So that means when your desk phone rings, this rings. You have one voicemail. When you call, it's your PBX. So your PBX is a virtual synchronizer to your mobile, just like you feel like you've got a virtual synchronizer to your desktop, Outlook or Notes. It's the same. It's the same contacts. It's the same mail. And that fundamentally changes how you use your desktop.